Hey everyone, it's Saoirse, and today I have a bit of a different look. One of the fun things about having very short hair, I guess I don't have a shaved head anymore, I now have like a pixie cut, is that it's really fun to play around with other looks, and it's a lot easier to wear a wig when you don't have to stuff like 3 feet of hair into it. So, yeah, I like it. It's fun. I've always wanted to try pink hair, and I tried dyeing my short hair pink and it didn't work at all, so I would have to bleach it, and I don't want to, so this is a fun alternative. Today we are going to talk about another short story collection, and that is Men Without Women by Haruki Murakami. Now, this was published in 2017 in English, originally in 2014 in Japanese. So, you know how I feel? Translated books, I feel like things are sometimes unfortunately lost in translation because there are just some elements culturally, just the fact that we don't have direct words that mean the same thing. You know, that's how language works. Newsflash. If you watched Squid Game, I have a lot of thoughts about anybody who watched that with the English dub. I don't know how anybody could sit through that. I didn't. I watched it in Korean, but even with the subtitles, knowing that so much in that is lost in translation, it's not as bad as the dub, but it's just frustrating because I want to really understand what's going on. So as always, I feel like Murakami always has this very recognizable style, but I would love to know if that feels the same in Japanese. So this book has 7 stories, and a lot of them appeared in other places before. A lot of them were in the New Yorker. I mean, this guy, the dream, right? To have multiple stories published in the New Yorker. So we have Drive My Car, Yesterday, An Independent Organ, Scheherazade, Kino, Samsa in Love, and Men Without Women. And he gets so much inspiration from music, from the Beatles, from jazz, and these are themes that are like always in his stories. So I will just, oh yeah, and I'll say his stories, I'm just going to consult my notes a lot. His stories are typically brooding and very vibe driven rather than plot or concept driven. So, we talked about George Saunders' stories last time, which are much more punchy and concise and precise and usually very concept driven. These are like almost dreamlike, and you feel like the main character is always, well, in this one obviously it's always a man because it's stories about men who either aren't with the woman that they love anymore, or the woman died, or it's always men who find themselves without women and usually have very sad lives as a result. But the men are always, and Murakami's characters tend to be these, what you would call the Tokyo everyman, and it's characters that you can sort of plug yourself into because they're regular people. So nothing of the real absurd of George Saunders, but Murakami does a lot of magical realism, and most of these stories weren't what I would call magical realism. Maybe just two of them, and then there was another that was sort of a weird concept, but he doesn't like go into the concepts all the time. He doesn't go full on like world building, I'm gonna tell you why this is so weird. He just kind of drops in bizarre things and then ghosts and doesn't tell us really why is this world that we're in feeling so weird. Okay, so I'll read a few things that give you a good idea of some of the themes and style in his writing. This is from Yesterday, and this is somebody talking about how they were always dating this girl from the time that they were young. And yeah. But another part of me is like relieved if we just kept going like we were with no problems or anything, a nice couple smoothly sailing through life. It's like, what was going to happen to us? We have that kind of choice, I was thinking. You follow? So here we see this need for conflict in a relationship, the need for things to constantly be in flux, and when the status quo gets boring, the characters want to deviate from it, and so we see this kind of in all literature, right? There has to be some sort of a conflict. You don't want to read a story about a couple that is just doing fine all the time and perfectly content. And I would venture to say that a lot of us in real life are bored by that as well, and unfortunately seek out drama, whether we are doing that consciously or subconsciously. But so this is like a very relatable concept that he puts into this story. I think a lot of people could plug themselves into many of these characters. He uses a lot of really great analogies, sharp comparisons. He's talking about this character in an independent organ. He has relationships with a lot of women who are already involved with someone else, so they're cheating with him. And it says, at one point, like, the women always end up getting married and they stop the affair. Like, they'll be in a relationship and also be cheating with this guy, and then they'll say, like, we gotta stop this, I'm getting married. In most cases, the decision to get married came just before they were about to turn 30 or 40, just like calendars that sell well at the end of the year. Just a nice little sentence that is like, ouch. The way that we feel our time as a useful and attractive woman just ticking away, and so we end up settling for something that might be less than what we want because we're hitting this milestone of 30 or 40, whatever we set for ourselves. And the way that that can be compared to a calendar being sold at the end of the year because it's not going to be useful for much longer. Anyway, I like that. Like, he just has these really poignant comparisons that he makes, and it's not constant, and he doesn't work in constant metaphors and similes and analogies. But when they're there, they're very well imagined. Identity. Okay, so there's this character. This is the same one in an independent organ. He says, but still these days I've often wondered, who in the world am I? And very seriously at that. If you took away my career as a plastic surgeon and the happy environment I'm living in and threw me out into the world with no explanation and with everything stripped away, what in the world would I be? Ooh, if that is not just me, if I didn't ask myself that 1 million times, especially since March of last year, since like the beginning of the pandemic, wow, I had that thought so much because I was in grad school at the time and was so distracted and, not always like having the best time, but I was very busy. And I had all of these extracurricular activities, and the first semester of grad school was great in that way, in that I was, running from class to grab some sushi, to go to the Tolkien Society meetings, and then go to archery practice and rowing practice, and I then had to do all my work at home, and yeah, I just felt useful, and that sort of gave me an identity, like I'm the busy student. And so then all of a sudden that was all taken away, and I was just sitting in my room writing my dissertation all summer and not doing anything that I was doing before. And then I came back, and the job that, I came back to Florida, because I was in school in Scotland. When I came back here and my job was gone, my job I thought would still be there, and I'd go back whenever they started calling people back. This is at Disney, so they were closed for a while and then didn't bring everybody back, and then ended up laying off most of us. So I got laid off in December. And so since then, still currently, I'm struggling with what is my identity. So this really resonated with me when he says, when you strip everything away. I thought that so much, like all the things that we loved to do, going out, anything with being around people, all of that was stripped away from us at the beginning of the pandemic, during the height of it, the worst part where everything was completely locked down. I started to think, who am I without all of those distractions? Can I only be happy if I'm allowed to go to bookstores and concerts and coffee shops? And it really, really scared me, and it still does, because it's frightening to think of one thing being taken away and suddenly you are not you anymore. And for this character, it's the woman that he loves, and he's not seeing her anymore, and so that sends him into a spiral. That was a long tangent. Oh, I don't have that many things to read. Okay, so this bit is about controlling what we can, and this is from Samsa in Love. "It's strange, isn't it?" the woman said in a pensive voice. "Everything is blowing up around us, but there are still those who care about a broken lock, and others who are dutiful enough to try to fix it. But maybe that's the way it should be. Maybe working on the little things as dutifully and honestly as we can is how we stay sane when the world is falling apart." So it made me think of Olaf in Frozen 2, when he's like, this is called controlling what we can when things feel out of control. I think that's from that one. So again, feels very timely. And these were obviously published before the pandemic. But it's fascinating how the pandemic made us think more about all of these things that were already happening. These are already issues. We've been saying for years that the world is ending and it's going to hell in a handbasket, and we're just saying that more now. But we've always been saying it because, whether you like it or not, there's always something bad going on. That is the world. Yeah. So it's easy to get sucked into that and kind of just give up. But there are always people who, even when it seems like everything is ending, are still going about their normal life. And one extreme example of this that I think is not good, because it's not like a coping thing. Like a nice coping thing when things are going to hell would be, you still go for your daily walks, good for you. That's self-care. But one thing that this made me think of is the fact that people were expected to work in the same condition or worse conditions for the same amount of pay throughout all of this time, where nothing about the world or their job or their life was the same. And how was that okay? I mean, nobody was prepared enough for what happened. And therefore, a lot of people suffered. And not only did people die, yes, but people who didn't die were made to live completely differently but not be compensated anymore. And a lot of people lost their homes because they couldn't work, because they weren't, like, their work was closed, so how could they make payments on their home? So yeah, sometimes like pretending like nothing's wrong and going around like not facing the fact that things have gone to hell is not healthy. And they never say in this story what exactly is going on. Maybe I'm just being dense, but something bad is happening outside, and so it's, well, let me just explain like what these stories are about in one sentence, if I can. Drive My Car is about a person who needs a chauffeur, and he's an actor, and he can't drive anymore because I think he got like a DUI. Yesterday is about somebody whose friend wants him to go out with his own girlfriend because he feels like he can't properly date her at the time because he's studying to get into school and he's just really lazy, and he trusts his friend to go out with this girl. And Independent Organ is that one about the man who dates all the women who are in relationships, and then the one that he really falls in love with, she leaves him, and that's devastating for him. Scheherazade was my favorite. Yeah, that was my favorite one. I think just because, so it's about a woman who comes over like all the time to this man's house, and we don't know why, but the man's not allowed to leave the house. And this is the one where it feels kind of like there might be some sort of sci-fi concept, because why is he not allowed? But it could be something as simple as, I don't know, not house arrest. There's just something keeping this man from being allowed to leave. So this woman comes over and does a bunch of chores for him, does his shopping, and part of the deal, and he doesn't really know why, is that she sleeps with him. And every time after, she'll tell him some story. And she starts to tell this story about herself as a kid, as like a lovesick high schooler. And I got so invested in it and was like, I need to know how this ended up. And then the story just ends and you don't. He does that all the time. Anyway, then there's Kino, which was my second favorite. And in that one, it's about a guy who owns a bar, and he has this really weird customer who tells him at one point, you need to get out of here. Like, you need to go away for a while, and if you send a postcard, do not write your name or address on it. And it's just really bizarre. And it has this, it's what Murakami is best at, which is this weird feeling that builds and builds throughout the story, that makes you really uncomfortable and you're not at ease the whole time. You're like, something's bad here, but I don't quite know what. And then there is Samsa in Love, where, so it's like based on Metamorphosis, which I never read, Kafka. So this person wakes up to find they've been transformed into Gregor Samsa, who I think in the original story, that character woke up to find himself transformed into a cockroach. So it's really interesting. Like, this is my third favorite, did I say that? You see this person wake up and basically, like, you don't know what they were before, if they ever had a consciousness, if they ever existed, but now they have a human body and they have to figure out how it works. And it was such a cool look at, like, what that would be like to suddenly have legs and have to figure out how to walk. And yeah, just really interesting. And then the person this woman comes over to fix his door, and he didn't know that was happening, but somebody comes over, and it's like the first woman that he sees, and he falls for her right away. And then Men Without Women, which is where a man gets a call from the partner of, it's the husband of a woman that he used to date, and the husband is telling him that the woman is dead. And he just goes on about like reminiscing about her. I didn't even finish reading. I have no concept of where my brain is right now. I don't think I read the last two little quotes here. There's this one from that last story, Men Without Women. We were mistaken about the time we should have met, like forgetting when you're supposed to meet someone. You get the time of day and place right, but miscalculate the day. So I liked that that idea, like, can we be mistaken about when we were meant to meet somebody, like at what point in our lives? You know how we often meet people and then the relationship doesn't work out and we think we just didn't meet at the right time. Can it be as simple as that? I just like the way he states it, like, we just got it wrong. We were mistaken about which day that was supposed to be. Okay, so one more thing from Men Without Women. And this is, I don't know, this is just an interesting bit that describes like what your life could be like after you lose somebody that you love. In any case, that's how you become men without women, and that's capitalized, before you even know it. And once you've become men without women, loneliness seeps deep down inside your body like a red wine stain on a pastel carpet. No matter how many home ec books you study, getting rid of that stain isn't easy. The stain might fade a bit over time, but it will still remain as a stain until the day you draw your final breath. It has the right to be a stain, the right to make the occasional public stain-like pronouncement, and you are left to live the rest of your life with the gradual spread of that color, with that ambiguous outline. Sounds are different in that world. So is the way you experience thirst, and the way your beard grows, and the way baristas at Starbucks treat you. Clifford Brown's solos sound different too. Subway car doors close in new and unexpected ways. So that's just a really lovely little way to say how the world feels completely alien to you once you lose somebody. All things, we don't usually think about it in the moment, but all things have these connotations. Like if you used to always go to a particular coffee shop with this person, well, that place it's always going to feel wrong without that person after they're gone. And you might find yourself going into coffee shops you never went to with that person and thinking about them, or not even thinking about them, but feeling something is just off just because it is a coffee shop in general. Yeah, I liked that. So I just wanted to say, like if you're comparing George Saunders with Murakami, if we're just talking about two people who write a lot of short stories, George Saunders usually has this very stylized, he has absurd, specific plots. And Murakami, in the other short story collection that I've talked about, Blind Willow, Sleeping Woman, which I recommend a lot, he did have more real, like, obvious concepts for some of those. But when he's not doing full-on magical realism, he tends to write this almost stream of consciousness, but not quite. It's like there's a flow to his writing, and rather than like short, sharp punches of George Saunders, he has this more of like a flowing river of words, and like I said, it's often characters that we can really relate to and who all are sort of interchangeable with each other as well. Like each of them could really be like the narrator in the other story. Yeah. So Murakami, he likes to get you worked up about a plot sometimes, only to just drop out without telling you the ending. Like with Scheherazade, I was like, please give me more of that. He tends to do an interesting thing that I don't see a lot in short stories, which is like, usually you expect a short story to build and build and build and then punch you and then run away at the end. It just like drops off. But he will, though he does just like leave off important things at the end, he'll more like build the suspense in the middle, and then sometimes it just sort of gradually goes like it's him saying like goodbye, like disappearing. It's not so much a mic drop, it's like he's slowly walking off stage. I don't know. So just incredibly different styles, and fascinating to compare them. I know not everybody is a writer who watches this channel, but I don't know. Even before I was really writing, I noticed these things, and it's just fun to see like which styles resonate with you and which writers you like. Even when they might be writing the same format, I don't know, the way that they do it is just so different, but it works. So a lot of different ways to be successful in whatever you're doing. When it comes to art, it's so subjective. There's a lot of ways to do it, and not everybody's gonna like everything. I'm sure some people would like George Saunders and not Murakami, or vice versa. Let me know your thoughts. Are you reading more short stories since you've been watching my channel? I hope so. I want to spread the good word about short stories. And that is all for now, so I will see you all next time. I don't know with what. I've got to crack on with some reading, so thank you so much for watching, and happy reading.